Welcome to the Science of Tree Felling series, Choosing the Correct Saw. In this video, we're going to talk about choosing the right saw for the right application. This is going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages about two particular types of saws. And if you see here, I have a larger saw and a smaller saw. Now, the size of the saw doesn't actually matter, but what I want us to focus on today is actually how the clutch mechanism is attached and works on each one of these saws. Now, this is an arborist saw. It's a top-handled saw. I'm just using this for demonstration, but don't focus on where the handles are located on the saws. Today, I really just want to focus on how the clutch is arranged on each one of these saws. And the saw categorization that I like to break these into is what I would call a felling saw versus a limbing saw. And the felling saw will start, if you look here, as the chain is attached to the sprocket, it's in a different orientation. So the chain is attached to a rim sprocket. The rim sprocket rides on the clutch drum. The clutch drum then on the inside has a clutch, which is a series of springs and shoes that through centrifugal force actually expand as the RPMs of the motor rotate and grabs the clutch drum, which in turn spins the rim sprocket, which in turn spins the chain. So what we have here is a neat little system that causes the drive mechanism of the chain and the saw to actually function. But I want to point out here a few things. Because this thing has a rim sprocket, so this little part here that attaches to the chain, this, once you pop this E-clip off and the retaining washer, you'll have direct access to that rim sprocket. That rim sprocket is a wear item. It's something that's going to need to be replaced with regularity depending on how much you use your saw. Easy to get at. The clutch drum and the clutch, on the other hand, are an inboard clutch, which means that the clutch is actually buried inside the saw housing. So you can't see the clutch on this saw because it's on the opposite side or the inside of this clutch drum. That makes it difficult for inspection. It also makes it difficult to dissipate heat. Heat is the enemy of all saws. We want to dissipate the heat and get the heat out of a saw as quickly as possible. That's why we have all these large cooling fins here. That's why the exhaust is ported away from the saw. And we want to get the heat away from all the metal parts so we decrease the likelihood for overheating and fatigue. So with the clutch being on the inside of the saw, that's one major drawback to this design. Also, we cannot inspect the clutch at any point in time unless we take everything off and take the clutch drum off, and then and only then can we inspect the clutch. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for inspection. But the power of this saw and this design is that this is a felling saw. At some point in time in your felling career, it is possible that you will get your saw bar and chain pinched. And you'll be in a situation that you won't be able to get your saw out unless you have to grab more mechanical advantage or whatever. And in that case, you're endangering the expensive part of your equipment. The power head, this section of the saw, costs a lot of money. The bar and chain, relatively inexpensive. So if you get your bar and chain stuck, it would make sense that if there's any chance that the tree is going to roll or do something that you don't want it to, you want to get the expensive part, the power head, out and away from that dangerous situation. The way that the orientation of this clutch here, this inboard clutch, is designed is that even if this is jammed into a situation, you can simply take that side plate off. You can take that side plate off by loosening up your bar nuts, take this off, and then by simply rotating the power head, you'll have enough distance to actually disengage the chain from the power head, leaving the bar and chain stuck in the situation, and you're able to pick out and remove the expensive part, the power head, to a safe distance or a safe scenario, and then you can finish retrieving your bar and chain. And worst case scenario, your bar and chain gets crushed, damaged, bent, whatever. You're out maybe tens of dollars, as opposed to crushing your power head, where you would be out hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars, depending on your setup. Conversely, a saw like this has an outboard clutch. This is what we call a limbing saw. We call it a limbing saw because of the orientation of the clutch being outside of the power head allows it better balance and torque ratio. So as you're moving the saw left, right, and you're limbing, it causes less stress and strain as the torque from the ignition or the torque from the chain and bar causes less force on your wrists because of the forces at play being outside of the power head. Don't know exactly the physics of that, but do know that this is going to be easier on your body if you're twisting and torquing a lot, just based on the clutch orientation. Also, notice that we can see the clutch wholly and easily. This makes for easy inspection of the actual clutch mechanism. You can see the springs that I was talking about earlier. You can see the shoes that I was talking about, and you can check on the color, making sure that it's not overheating. You can actually inspect the springs, that they're all there and intact. And you can inspect the tension and making sure that this mechanism is operating properly visually just by removing that side plate. Also, we have a better idea of being able to inspect our drum because our drum is fully exposed. Now, because of the orientation of this, we no longer have a rim sprocket. Our sprocket isn't easy to take off and inspect or replace. Our sprocket is on the inside, and the inside here is called a spur sprocket because it's actually riding on the spurs, which are directly attached to our clutch drum. So when our sprocket needs to be replaced, so does our clutch drum because they're one in the same piece. So a little bit more expensive of a wear item that has to be replaced. Also, to replace our sprocket, we have to remove our clutch. Not impossible, not even very difficult to do, but some people do struggle with that because you have to stop the cylinder from operating up and down, which means you actually have to take the spark plug out and put in a specialized tool, and I emphasize specialized tool, designed by the manufacturer. Don't use a shoelace or a scrunch jammed in there. Again, the power head is the expensive part. We don't want to damage the cylinder, but we want to stop it from operating up and down. So you put the specialized tool in there and you're able to easily take apart the clutch. Maybe in a later video, I'll show you how to do that. But for now, know that that has to come out to be able to replace the sprocket. Again, that's a wear item because the chain runs on it. It will need to be replaced with some regularity. So our inspection is easier. Our parts are going to be a little bit more expensive because it's a little bit more to replace, and it's going to be more difficult to replace these parts as well. But the big disadvantage to this type of saw, and I'm not saying this type by top handle, I'm saying this type is a limbing saw, and this orientation of the clutch being outside or an outboard clutch, is that if we get into that same situation where we get this bar and chain stuck, which may happen sometime in your career, if we get this stuck because of this orientation, I can no longer easily take off the bar and chain. It's stuck between the power head and the clutch. So that's why we call this a limbing saw, because we want to use this for limbing where there's much less chance that we're going to get the bar and chain stuck and be able to not be able to retrieve it without maybe getting another saw or applying mechanical advantage. because we don't ever want to get this bar and chain stuck, because once it gets stuck, that means our power head, the expensive bit, is locked into that situation. And if the tree rolls or does something that we don't want it to, now we're jeopardizing the expensive part of our saw. So this is an outboard clutch, and we want to only use a saw like this if we have the option for limbing purposes. And we want to use an inboard clutch, which I showed you earlier, for felling situations, based on the orientation of the clutch and the ergonomics associated with our ability to move. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages, but you should understand the type of saw that you're purchasing or the type of saw that you're using and its limitations. Hey, if you like these videos and you found something interesting or learned something today, make sure you like and subscribe and continue watching the series. There's a lot of really good videos on here on how to become better. Maybe you're already skilled in tree felling or arboriculture, but it never hurts to hear another person's perspective and learn a little something along the way. So again, if you like what you're watching, like and subscribe, and keep on to the next series. See you next time.